Alright, today we're going to do some more drawing from imagination practice because that's what I've been working on recently. And also this video is sponsored by HUION. They sent me their Kamvas 22 Gen 3 tablet, which we're going to be unboxing, and then of course I'm going to be using it during the video. Alright, this is HUION's Kamvas 22 Gen 3. This is their latest tablet. It actually literally just came out. It's a 22-inch tablet, 2.5K screen, and it has a 90 Hz display. Then here we have the color calibration report, and as usual everything comes calibrated right out of the box, so you don't have to worry about that too much. Then we also have the quick start guide, and as you can see on that, this can also connect to your phone. So if you enjoy drawing on your phone, then I'm pretty sure all HUION tablets can connect to your phones actually. So yeah, if you like drawing on your phone, then HUION's a pretty good tablet brand to invest into. Then for the cables, we have the standard USB A to C, we got a C to C cable, HDMI cable, and of course the power cables. Not too many cables, so the cable management is actually pretty easy. Then as for the stylus, we get the PW600L, which has 16K pressure sensitivity levels and 60 degrees of tilt support, of course. Unfortunately, that's the only stylus that it comes with, so we don't get the slim pen, which is the one that I prefer to draw with. I was actually really surprised to see that they didn't include that one. But yeah, as for the tablet itself, it's a pretty nice looking tablet. It's very light, so I guess if you have the backspace, somehow you could use this as a portable device. Then we also have an adjustable stand, and as you saw earlier, they also included a screwdriver, so if you want to remove the stand, you can do that. On the back, I don't know if you could see it too well when it was turned off, but there's also an LED light panel, which it's pretty gimmicky, but you know, if you have your whole gamer light setup going on, then it's pretty cool. And as you can see, it's about 2.5 human heads wide, 1.5 human heads tall. But with the unboxing out of the way, I guess we can start drawing. So like I said, this is going to be drawing from imagination practice, and the way I've been doing this recently is I find a reference and then I try to draw it from a different angle. And usually I try to think about it in terms of perspective instead of just trying to wing it. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing. First, we're going to draw the actual pose normally, just to get an idea for what this pose looks like. And this kind of a hard pose just because of how the torso is twisted. I think the twisting torso is something that I kind of want to practice a lot more in the future. So maybe the next video will be about that, but we're also only going to be drawing the torso because drawing the arms and legs fully is not that difficult, you know, at least if you're keeping them simplistic. And I think drawing the torso is probably the hardest thing when it comes to drawing from imagination, because if you can draw the torso, drawing the arms and legs is just about connecting the dots, essentially. So we got to get the torso right, and then from there we can kind of do everything else. And the way I tend to practice this drawing from imagination stuff right now is, of course, I start off by setting up the scene with the horizon line and then choosing the vanishing points, which is kind of a really important thing because it helps you set up the 3D space, and then from there, whatever you draw, you know it's going to be drawn accurately according to perspective. For my reference, I'm also using a Pose Maniacs model. So in case you don't know, Pose Maniacs is a website where they have a bunch of 3D models that you can, or that all have different poses, and you can actually move the camera around to see those poses from different angles. So when you're doing this drawing from imagination practice, I think using Pose Maniacs is, Pose Maniacs is probably a really good resource because you can draw the pose normally first, then draw the pose from a different angle from your imagination, and then you can move the camera around to see that pose and see if you did stuff correctly. Which is what I did here. After finishing everything, I just went through it all again and checked my mistakes using those 3D models. And it is actually surprising how different the body looks compared to how you would think it would look. Because I think the torso was actually twisted a lot more than I thought it was. Like, I'm looking at the reference image on the left there right now, and it looks like the pelvis is facing, or if we treat the pelvis as if it's facing straight forward, the upper torso is basically facing us. So there's almost a 90-degree change in angle between them. Well, technically it's a bit less. It's maybe more like 60 degrees, and it's kind of exaggerated because of the shoulders, because the shoulders can move separately from the ribcage, so they can make the angle between pelvis and ribcage look more exaggerated than it really is. But capturing that twist in the torso in perspective is probably one of the hardest things about drawing the body. And not just this particular twist, but you know, if the body twists a different way, it's also equally as difficult capturing that twist, because angles change very drastically depending on the perspective. The closer something is to your center of vision, the more accurate the angles look according to their you know, real life counterparts. But then the further away something gets, the more drastic the perspective distortion becomes, meaning even a 90-degree angle, or something that is a true 90-degree angle in real life, in perspective, if you just look at the angle from 2 dimensions, it can look like it's a 30-degree angle, for example. Like, you can see it right now on the perspective grid. If you look at some of those corners all the way at the bottom of the grid, if you were to look at those corners from 2 dimensions, they look like 30-degree angles or 40-degree angles. But technically, they are 90-degree angles. So that's kind of the issue with angles in perspective. It's just really hard to guess what angle something is supposed to have, because of how much those angles change depending on how far away you are from the center of vision. And that's actually that's a pretty common mistake that people make, because they tend to exaggerate those angles too much when they're drawing stuff that's really far away from the horizon line. And then if you took those objects out of perspective, they would look very different than what you imagined they would look like. So with perspective, you kind of have to draw a bunch of very subtle angles instead of exaggerating everything constantly. Then something else people might struggle with when it comes to drawing from imagination is actually getting the rotations of everything right, which I guess comes back to like rotating the torso and stuff. But the easiest way to get all of the rotations correct is just to use boxes or very boxy shapes, because with boxes it's pretty easy, well, it's not easy, but it's doable to control how they're rotated. So if you draw the whole form as a box first, or you split it into multiple smaller boxes, and then you draw a second drawing, kind of like what I'm doing now, where the first one is just the boxy forms, and then you make another drawing where you actually draw the details using that initial drawing kind of as a guide, it should become a lot easier to draw stuff from imagination. At least that's what I think right now. But the issue with using boxes is that they also don't follow the body perfectly, especially in a pose like this where the upper torso is twisted with one of the shoulders going all the way back. If you're using a box, you can't really show that unless you twist the box itself. So a lot of that comes down to thinking about how you can simplify something the easiest way, which is also why you should do a lot of practice drawing something with boxes, because that helps you figure out what the simplification should look like. And then once you understand that simplification, you can kind of just imagine the simplified form while you're drawing the slightly more complex forms. So then instead of drawing the simplified forms first and then drawing the more complex forms separately, you can draw the complex form immediately and just imagine the simplified form. Then this drawing that I'm doing right here is just taking the exact same angle that I wanted to draw, but just making some corrections to it, because I think the first two were a bit too exaggerated, because I think the torso is a lot more upright in the pose. So then with this correction, I tried to keep everything a lot more upright. Specifically the pelvis, I think I exaggerated the angle of the pelvis a bit too much. It's really tempting to do that sort of exaggeration with the torso too, where you give it this huge C curve, because it's so easy to draw that C curve line when you're essentially drawing your gesture curve. But you always have to kind of tone it down a little bit if you want to keep things believable. And then with this drawing, it's kind of the same issue. I went a bit overboard with how much the upper torso is curving backwards. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind. But those are basically all of the imagination drawings I did for this particular pose. I'll definitely do more of these in the future, because drawing from imagination is something that I'm working on a lot right now. It's basically the only thing that I'm practicing right now. But yeah, that's it for the drawing. Hopefully you guys actually drew along with me. People never let me know whether or not they drew along, so I hope you guys are actually doing that. If you want to check out the HUION Kamvas 22, there's a link in the description. And then in the description, we also have the YouTube memberships if you'd like to support the channel. And you can also join our Discord server where you can get advice from other artists. But I guess I'll see you all next time.